Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind address the theme, crossing new frontiers to conquer today's challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be there on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine.
In 1989, it made the news headlines that a lone wolf Nigerian supercomputer wizard in the United States had discovered how to build the fastest supercomputer and discovered how to always compute fastest. I am that Nigerian supercomputer scientist that was in the news back in 1989 and in the news for discovering practical parallel supercomputing. I was in the news because I was unconventional and saw something previously unseen, namely a new way of supercomputing. In the old way of supercomputing, a supercomputer that did only one thing at a time was used to solve the toughest problems that arose in mathematics, science, and engineering. In my new way of supercomputing, I used the slowest processors that each merely executed 47,303 calculations per second per processor. I am that lone wolf supercomputer scientist that was in the news for discovering how to perform the fastest calculations and how to do so across a new internet, that is a new global network of 65,536 inexpensive, tightly coupled commodity off-the-shelf processors that shared nothing between each other. What is the contribution of Philip Emeagwali to the development of the computer? I discovered how to always perform the world's fastest computations and perform it with the world's slowest processors. I was in the news in 1989 because my experimental discovery of practical parallel supercomputing marked a milestone in the history of the computer. For me, Philip Emeagwali, my experimental discovery of 1989 of practical parallel supercomputing wasn't unexpected. I expected to confirm my earlier theoretical discovery of how to massively parallel process across a new internet that will become a virtual supercomputer. I expected to confirm that I could communicate across and compute on 65,536 computational fluid dynamics codes and communicate and compute them at once. As a theory, my theoretical discovery of parallel supercomputing was ridiculed as a huge waste of everybody's time. Yet, I discovered how to save everybody time and how to do so by synchronously communicating and simultaneously computing in only one day what used to take 65,536 days or 180 years. The contribution of Philip Emeagwali to the development of the computer is this. I experimentally discovered how to parallel process across a new internet, that is a new global network of 65,536 central processing units. After my discovery, a grand challenge problem that formerly took 65,536 days or 180 years of time to solution on one central processing unit now takes only 1 day of time to solution across a new internet. Metaphorically speaking, that was how I discovered 180 years in 1 day. Back in 1989, the award committee of the Computer Society was not aware that I was black and African, and for that reason gave me credit for discovering practical parallel supercomputing, and did so without taking race into consideration. But scientists that knew that I was black and African were terribly upset that the Computer Society gave me the top award in the field of supercomputing and gave it to me without digging deeper to discover that I was black and African. In that respect, the IEEE Computer Society did not give the top supercomputer award to a black supercomputer scientist. I simply kept the credits for my contributions, and I could keep them because I was the sole inventor of practical parallel supercomputing and the sole expert on the new supercomputer that parallel processed across my ensemble of 64 binary thousand processors. Parallel processing appeared as science fiction on February 1, 1922, and as 64,000 human computers working together and in parallel and doing so to forecast the weather. The precondition to forecasting the weather is that those 64,000 human computers must solve the initial boundary value grand challenge problem of calculus that is governed by the primitive equations of meteorology. For 36 years after 1922, interest in parallel processing was lost in part because the automatic programmable computer that provided the motivation for faster computing did not exist and was not invented until 1946. Parallel processing started appearing in computer science literature and appeared regularly onwards of 1958. For the 31 years onward of 1958, parallel processing was mocked at computer science conferences, and the supercomputer technology was ridiculed as a beautiful theory that lacked an experimental confirmation. As a research supercomputer scientist, my goal is to discover how to compute fastest and do so with the slowest processors, or how to do more with less, and how to create reality from science fiction. Parallel processing, the technology that enables the supercomputer to solve many problems at once, enabled me to solve 65,536 problems at once. In principle, your computer can do whatever my supercomputer can do. However, your computer that is powered by only one isolated processor takes 30,000 years to solve a grand challenge problem that my supercomputer that is powered by an ensemble of over 10 million processors takes only 1 day to solve. Practical parallel supercomputing must be investigated on a broad canvas and imagined in broad imaginative strokes. Practical parallel supercomputing only benefits humankind if and only if it is proven to solve the grand challenge problems. Practical parallel supercomputing is not for the faint of heart or for those locked within their own intellectual silos. As a research supercomputer scientist, my goal was not to merely invent new algebra and new calculus. My research goal was to project my new mathematics and project that new knowledge from the blackboard to the motherboard and across a new internet that is a new global network of 64 binary thousand processors, and most importantly, to project that new supercomputer into the real world where it helps my country of birth, Nigeria, discover and recover otherwise elusive crude oil and natural gas, or where it impacts the market trader in my ancestral hometown of Onitsha. The fastest supercomputer attracts the toughest mathematical problems in physics in the manner a high mountain attracts the storms. The supercomputer is to mathematics what the Nile is to Egypt. Each is a lifeline. The supercomputer is an intellectual extension of the complex equations scribbled on the mathematician's blackboard. My goal was to invent a supercomputer out of the slowest processors. Inventing that supercomputer demanded that I become an athlete of the mind. 9 in 10 supercomputer cycles are consumed solving the partial differential equation of calculus and physics. For that reason, practical parallel supercomputing may be defined as solving millions upon millions of initial boundary value problems at once. On the 4th of July 1989, I announced my discovery of practical parallel supercomputing. The response from everybody was that I made a mistake. The first 6 copies of my 1,057-page research report that was dated July 4, 1989, that described how I discovered practical parallel supercomputing were thrown into the dustbin of the reviewers. I was mocked, and I was warned that I was computing with science fiction, not with a new supercomputer. Everybody that said that I made a mistake was mistaken. Practical parallel supercomputing has withstood the test of time and is the vital technology that powers every supercomputer manufactured today. That experimental discovery that occurred on the 4th of July 1989 took the parallel supercomputer from a research and development project to the widespread commercialization that is called the modern computer. Parallel processing validated the modern computer. The amount of new computations that I discovered how to compute on the 4th of July 1989 was 64 binary thousand times what could be computed only 1 day earlier. After 1989, massively parallel processing became the standard technology that must be used in all supercomputers. Before 1989, the fastest 1,000 supercomputers in the world derived their supercomputing speeds from only one vector processing unit. After 1989, the fastest 1,000 supercomputers in the world derived their supercomputing speeds from up to 10.65 million central processing units that counterintuitively computed 10.65 million things at once instead of intuitively computing only one thing at a time. My 1989 paradigm shift from computing only one thing at a time to computing 65,536 things at once opened the door to computing 10.65 million things at once. A future world without the parallel supercomputer could be a world without the computer of the future. If parallel supercomputing is subtracted from human knowledge, nearly every computer, all supercomputers, and the internet itself will shut down. Parallel supercomputing is not a new knowledge that was created. Parallel supercomputing exists theoretically and a priori, and existed as a technique that was uncovered for computing faster. I discovered practical parallel supercomputing when I parallel processed across my new internet. That was a new global network of 65,536 tightly coupled commodity off-the-shelf processors that shared nothing between each other and that were equal distances apart from each other. I turned science fiction to reality by discovering how to parallel compute and how to do so sight unseen. I was in the news back in 1989 because I was the first person to solve a grand challenge problem and solve it by massively parallel computing it. I achieved that supercomputer breakthrough and did so at a time all my 64 binary thousand processors were expected to forever remain silent. Parallel supercomputing is an invention because computers and supercomputers are now parallel processing. Thank you. I'm Philip Emeagwali. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Insightful and brilliant lecture.